have our box sides glued up, and we have a little bit of squeeze out here that we're going to want to get rid of. Best way to do that is probably over here at the sanding disc, where you can hold your box flat and square, and you don't have much danger of rounding over the edges like you would with a random orbital sander. However, you do have to pay attention to the fact that because this is a spinning disc, move this out of the way, this center is not going to be moving hardly at all, and that is going to be moving very, very fast. So if you press against the outside part of the circle, you will take off a lot of wood very quickly, while very little is taken off in here. So you need to be very careful about pressing your wood just up against here. The second thing to pay attention to about this thing is because it is spinning in the counterclockwise direction. Let's wipe the dust off of this top here for a second. Notice we have labeled no, no, no over here, because as it spins up, if you try to press against here, your workpiece will be lifted up into the air. And what we want to do is press against this side, and we have a nice arrow indicating the direction of spin here. So the sanding part is going to be mostly on this left side of the spinning wheel. You don't want to be pressing against the right side, which limits this effectiveness. And as with all other power tools, you need to respect it and use it as it was meant to be used, and not try to force another idea onto it. So clearing off the table here so that we can get into it, and we can line up. Pay attention to this. We're going to, when we turn this on, we're also going to want the dust collection. So here, let me show this also. We've got the dust collection hose here. So we need to open the gate back here by pulling that back, and then come over and turn on the dust collection, and you will hear it blowing. And then when you're up close, you can hear the hum of it being collected from the dust flowing through this machine also. So we're going to hold our box against here, but not for very long, because we don't want to shave off the one side and not the other side. So we're going to press against and slide down to try to get as even as possible, and we can rotate it around. That will also help with that, paying attention to how we're holding it. Alright, sanded off all the sides, making sure it hit the corners, and we want nice sharp corners. We don't want these guys rounded over, because we're going to put shoe molding along the bottom here. So we have all of the squeeze out from the glue sanded off, and now we're ready to cut the shoe molding miters and put them along the bottom. With the squeeze out sanded off, let's talk about cutting that mitered molding. Now, because this molding, it has been fancified with the Roman OG, we need to pay attention to what direction we're cutting it in. So let's take a look at the profile. What does it look like when we have these two ends coming together? So if we have the notch at the top on both of them, they line up, and you can look at the profile on this guy, the profile on that guy, and they match up. And the same is true if we cut it the other way around and we put the notch at the bottom. So we can line these guys up here, and you can see profile is the same. Try that again. This time without my finger behind it. All right, there we go. Profile is the same this way, and we have the curve at the top and the notch at the bottom on both sides. But what if I am not paying attention and I cut them opposites? And then when I put them up against each other, you can see this profile is somewhat of a mashup, as well as the fact that the two heights don't quite line up. So, and these lines from the vertical don't quite line up. So it doesn't look nearly as good if we are not consistent with how we cut these up. So whichever direction you decide to pick for how you like the look, it doesn't even matter. You just need to agree with yourself and be consistent with that direction. And so make all your cuts in the same plane, cutting down this way or cutting down this way. In either case, you need to be consistent with yourself and agree with yourself so that as you go all the way around, your box will be consistent from this side to this side. Yes? The second thing that you need to pay attention to is that on this box here, we're going to want to have the miters going out on a diagonal so that the piece of the wood that is up against the board is short and the piece that's out from the wood is long. So that is going to inform how we cut here. So we're going to want to cut so that this flat piece, do I have this oriented right? No, I don't. There we go, because I want this guy to be on the top. All right, so we're going to want our flat piece, this flat piece right here, to be the short one. So we're going to angle it so that the molded part is longer. So when I put it in my miter box here, lip up against the side, and I hold it against this here, I need to make sure that I'm cutting, in this X here, I'm cutting such that the shorter version, the shorter edge, is going to be the flat edge, and the molded edge is going to be the long edge. So before I actually go cut one more time, I want to check and make sure that I have the notch at the top. And then I'm going to cut right on the end so as not to waste wood. Alright, so let's take a look at this guy. Here we go. So you can see that we have a miter cut, and the molded edge is the long edge, and the inside, this side is going to go straight up against the box side. That's the short edge. Now, to measure the actual length, we're going to do it relative to the actual box that we have, especially since now that we've sanded it down, it's not going to be 8 by 6. So we're going to need to put this up against the edge and get this guy just a little bit longer so that you can feel a bump there on this side so that the molding is too long. And then over here, I'm going to take our pencil or pen, preferably pencil, but I have a pen on me, and mark off. Here we go. I have a line that I've marked off, and now I'm going to cut that guy, and I need to make sure I cut that guy in the correct orientation. I need to cut it again with the molded side long and the flat side short. So this time I'm going to come around and go on the other side, and I want to cut either on my line or a little bit longer than my line. So now I have the short side is going to go up against the box, and the two longer sides are going to come out from the box, and this is going to be the basic shape that I need for all 4 sides of my box. So I have the first short side, and having cut it, it's coming in at just barely long enough, even though I tried to make it too long. Now this piece is still long enough that I can cut one of the long sides from this piece, so I'm going to do that. And if you notice, this is now oriented the wrong direction. This has the flat side is long and the molded side is short, so I need to correct this by cutting off in the opposite direction before I measure it. Alright, corrected. So I'll move that guy out of the way for the moment, pick a long side, and I'll go even a little bit longer this time because I want to be too long here so I can sand it down to the correct length carefully, sneak up on it so I have a good tight fit. So I'll take that, make that too long. I'm going to mark off down here, again a little bit too long, and then I will cut it down to the appropriate size, and this time I'll try putting it up against the back side. Maybe not. That's not going to give me a whole lot to grip and hold on to here. So I can turn it around. And again, make sure the molded side is the long side. Test. This is a little bit too long, and I can bring this guy down and see how these two guys fit together. So I can have a nice tight fit here and see if those guys fit together, and this guy is spot on. That was a close call. This guy is definitely too long. Alright, let's come in for a close-up so you can see both sides. So we have here this guy, and that side, this edge right here where this guy matches up with this is just the right length. to go all the way across, and then I have a decent fit. It will be tighter once I glue and nail it down. And then this guy is too long, and what that means is I can take it over to this disc sander that I used earlier to sand off these guys, and sand that down using the miter gauge. Now I have 2 more sides to do, and I have 1 more long piece of molding, so I can repeat the process to get my last 2 sides of the molding. Let's have a close-up, and you can go see that each of these pieces is just a smidge too long, and that means that there's a gap. So what we can do is go over to the disc spinner, disc sander, and use the miter gauge set to 45 degrees and sand these guys down so that they are the right length. Back at the disc sander, I have box plus shoe molding set up right next to it on the table, and I'm going to go piece by piece and sand down so that it's the right length. You can see that this guy is considerably too long here. So what I need to do is pick one piece to start with, and this guy is already too length. So now I'm going to go with this guy, set my miter gauge to the correct angle to sand this guy down, and then come back and check until he's just about the right length here, and then I'll move on to the next piece before I've actually finished this piece. This is going to take a fair amount of persistence and patience to get it right, but I think the results will be pleasing in the end. Now I grabbed the miter gauge, which can be set to any number of angles, and I noticed that it's not set to 45 degrees. So I need to loosen the handle, set it to 45 degrees, and then tighten it. I'm being very careful to get it close to 45 as I can. Again, remember, only on the left side. I have these guys down to really close, but they're still just a smidge too long. And what I can do is I can reset my miter gauge to do the other side. So I've been doing the right sides. Now we can do the left side, and it's important to do both sides because, let's see here. Let's see here. Can I see these fuzzies? All right, see these? There are fuzzies here from the saw that will give us a tighter fit if we sand those off. So we'll reset the miter gauge to the other 45 degrees and sand these off a little bit, and that'll finish up our set to sneak up on this fit to make sure that we get a good tight fit with these miter cuts. Alright, I've snuck up on this fit. It looks pretty well tight all the way around. So then the next step is to take it over to the air compressor and use the nail gun and some glue to tack these onto the base, making sure that the bottoms of these guys line up with the bottom of the box.